Hi everyone, welcome back to Aidans Railways. Today we're going to take one of these Hornby Railroad coaches and we're going to dull it down so it looks a bit more like this. So this is some of the items that I'm going to need today. We're going to use some enamel thinners, some acrylic thinners, both of those are just the Humbrol ones, some acrylic varnish. This is just the satin version, that's a 135 from Humbrol. I'm actually using two types of masking tape just purely because it's what I've got lying around. We've got the Tamiya masking tape there, and I've got some Gauge Master masking tape. Now this stuff's really flexible, it's more like a PVC. And I'm going to be using one of the cheapest airbrushes that I could find on the market. I have got a more expensive one, but this is to prove how easy and cheaply this can be done. This costs about £5 off eBay. It's a simple one. You can use it off a compressor or you can actually use it off the aerosol cans. If you can only afford to get the aerosol cans, it'll work just as well. To dull it down, I'm using some Games Workshop, I think it is, paints. This is an acrylic, it's a Citadel colour and it's a Seraphim Serpy, I believe it is. So we've got that, and because I'm going to weather down the chassis a little bit, I've actually got some sand wash from Humbrol. Another thing that might come in useful is a craft knife. I didn't really have to use this, but I could see why some people might have to, so I'm going to include that in this. I am using a compressor rather than an aerosol can, purely because I have one, and to prove how cheap these are, this is another eBay find, and this was about £20–25. I bought it, must be about 4 or 5 years ago now, and they're still available on eBay. But it's just a very simple little compressor. It's even got a water trap on it, and as you can see, I've got the pipe on the end here, and that just connects straight onto that very cheap airbrush. So at some point in life, we've all probably had 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe even more of these Hornby LNER, we'll call them railroad teaks. They've actually been kicking around since at least the 70s, I believe anyway. I know that my father had some. I remember them vividly on the train set, and they've come in various different forms, like this one, brake one, and the sleeping car as well. More recently, people may remember in a video I've done that I actually purchased 5 of the Hornby main range LNER teaks to go with the 2 that came free in the Hornby 00 set. I'll put a link up in the corner there. And that was to complete that, give it a full rake and make it, you know, really special. As I said in that video, I've got about 15 or more of these. I know I've got 15, but I suspect there are actually quite a number more of these in the cupboards. The ones that I've got in the cupboards and in tubs and things like that actually vary. This one here is actually quite a recent one. This came out of the Master of the Glen set, and they still come in the Flying Scotsman set, I believe. Now, a lot of the other ones I have been picked up second-hand from model shops, collectors' fairs, second-hand stores, car boot sales, all that sort of thing, the internet. And they've usually varied between the £4 and £6 mark, so they are really quite cheap. There's an abundance of them out there. They're not rare. They've been kicking around for years. Now, because I have so many of them, I don't really want to get rid of them. So I've made the decision to just try and modify them a little bit, dull them down, because they really do look very plasticky, especially near the Hornby main range ones. And truth be said, in real life, these would have been a bit darker than what we're quite considerably a bit darker than these, and especially when you put it up against the main range one, and they would have been dirty. At the end of the day, they would have been dirty. They wouldn't have had a nice clean chassis along the bottom here, and they wouldn't have been all nice and shiny all the time, because at the end of the day, it was steam trains that were pulling them, and they would have got very, very, very dirty. So let's get started. First things first, if you're going to spray them, make sure you're doing it in a well ventilated area and that you've got, you know, relative PPE, gloves, face mask, all that sort of thing. So I've done this actually in a spare room that we have, windows wide open, and it's literally just used for me messing around and experimenting with models. Second thing I would say about getting started is, if you're not too sure, use a second-hand one that you can just trial it out on and then see how you believe it works. because what we're actually effectively doing here is spray tanning a railway model. And when I say spray tanning, if you ever watched Friends in the 90s and early 2000s, there was actually an episode where Ross gets spray tanning wrong, and it goes wrong badly, and this could go badly if you don't sort of take your time and let things dry. I'd like to also say that you could actually brush apply this. I've seen it brush applied. The reason I chose to use the airbrush is for a number of reasons actually. It was for speed, and it was for a even surface, and it was also because when I'd watched when I watched somebody do it with a brush, or the finished result that someone had done with a brush, a lot of the fluid was actually gathering up all the way along all the detail, and it was sort of, you could see it was like puddles all the way along. So I've chosen to use the airbrush technique. So first things first, we need to strip this carriage down. Now, if you've never done this before, it is really quite easy. The bogies are just push fit. They will come straight out with a little bit of gentle persuasion. So you just want to get your fingers in there behind it, and there you go, straight out. And you can see on the top there how it just pushes in. Next up, we need to get this body shell off of the chassis. Now, hopefully you'll be able to see this. At the top here, there are a pair of clips, and they just need to be tweezed in like that. And it's the same at the other end here. And there you go. As soon as you've pushed them in, it'll release from the body shell and from the chassis, and it will come off. Next note is the ends slide straight down, and they'll just come off like that. You're left with it very simply, 2 corridor ends. Now I suppose you don't have to take them off, but I'm taking it off for ease of masking. I'm going to do the chassis. You don't have to do the chassis if you don't want to do the chassis. This isn't the be all and end all. You don't have to do it this way. But I've chosen that I'm going to do the chassis. And very similarly to the actual body shell, there's just 4 clips, and that is all that's holding this glazing on. As soon as you undo them, that'll lift off, so will the interior, and you'll be left with a metal weight as well on some of them. So I'm just going to quickly whip that off, and then we'll get back. All I used to push those clips out was a cocktail stick, nothing major, no screwdrivers, nothing like that. So that was really quite simple. Now you could take the opportunity at this point to paint maybe the interiors and things like that. I'm not going to go down that road. You could put people in. I'm still not going to go down that road, but I might do it at a later date, but not today. So I don't need the weight, and I don't need the glazing, and I don't need the seating. So they're going to go to one side. The next thing you could do, I've done it, I've chosen to do it because I've picked about 6 or 7 of the coaches I'm going to use. You could take off the wheel sets, which are easy enough done. They're just push fit slid in. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to mask up the roof, and I need to mask up these corridor bellow ends. It's very simple, it's not very hard, and it's actually really simple, which is one of the reasons why I keep my nails long on my thumbs. There is actually a ridge all the way along here. So getting the masking tape to tape up along the edge is incredibly easy. Now what I've actually used is the gauge master I should say, masking tape, because it's very flexible. It's not a paper, it's more of a PVC. And as a result, it will stick and it'll mold round where I want it to go. So quick time lapse, and I'll show you how I've done that. So there you go. That's the roof all masked up along there. You wouldn't think it, but this tape is white, so you think it's actually the roof that's there. One thing I will sort of point out is this is a very, very recent coach, and it's almost immaculate because it's very rarely been out. It's actually been in the set for the Master of the Glens. And the ones that I'm actually going to be working on are on a lot of the second-hand ones, because let's be honest, I wanted to try this out on what I would call, haven't cost me a lot of money, £4, £6 at most a coach. So if I'm going to do it initially, I'm going to try it on them. This will get put to one side, and if it works as good as I hope it will, then well, we'll be doing it these as well. All it's left to do is these end corridors, and all I'm going to use for that is the Gauge Master flexible PVC tape. It is actually masking tape, it's not insulation tape, although it may be very similar, but it'll get right round these black corridors. So I'm actually spraying the coaches neat with the paint out of the Games Workshop Seraphim bottle. I've not thinned it down with any acrylic thinners. I've got the acrylic thinners purely for rubbing at a later date with a cotton bud if there's any overspray after I take the masking tape off. It is quite literally going on neat. So this one's sort of gone off, and it's a little bit darker, but it's not dark enough yet. So I'm going to give it another flash over both sides, might even give it a third. So this is one, and this is very much darkened down now, and I think that's probably as far as I want to go. We can still see the numbering and the lettering. That's just probably as far as I want to go with toning it down. I think the next step will probably be some varnish. So as you can see, it's dulled down a huge amount now. Took my gloves off. What I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to give it a coat of satin varnish. So the mix here for the bogies and the chassis is a 50-50 mix. It's the sand weathering liquid from Humbrol, and it's 50% of that in the jar and 50% of enamel thinners, as it is an enamel, mixed up quite thoroughly with a cocktail stick, or a few cocktail sticks, and then sprayed at a distance, just very lightly, to let it go on. I'm not putting loads on, I'm just putting a bit on just to make it a bit dirtier. That's all I'm doing. So I hope you can see this well enough. So we've got P2 Cock of the North up here, just to give a comparison. And as we run along, you can see the coaches that I have painted. I'm going to have to apologise. I'm actually juggling over lots of things that are in the way at the moment. There's actually a sleeper coach down the back there. That isn't damage off any tape or anything. It's actually, it's a very old, very old Hornby Railways coach. And I think I'm going to do something with the roof on that one. I'm going to come back at a later date, but you can see here, and we've got the sleeping cars running along. All in all, I don't think this has come out too badly. I definitely think they look better, personally. It's not to everyone's taste. Darkened down like this. So here we go. So I'm going to bring it along from Cock of the North, and you can see one of the coaches that I have just done coupled up. And then you've got a railroad coach, much like that. I prefer this over this any day. What I would suggest is, once you get to a shade that you like, stay with that. I wanted these to be much darker, because I'm probably going to weather the roofs up quite heavily, and I'll probably have quite a dirty locomotive at the front. It's been an interesting experiment, and it isn't one that's worried me, because of the fact that, very simply, those coaches, I didn't want to get rid of them, and I wanted to do something with them. So I've dulled them down. I know I can use them again. I'd rather use them like that than I would in their original state. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Bye now. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed, click on the round button. If you enjoyed this video and you want to watch some more, there's another video at the top of the screen, and there's a playlist at the bottom. See you again soon.